Hello everyone. This is Courtney Cummings. Today I will be giving your professional development on assessment in the classroom. So let's get started. First things first is that assessment is not so scary. I was definitely one of those teachers prior to learning about assessments. I was one of those teachers that thought that assessments were a very scary topic. Um, and that we only give them to get results, and they only tell how teachers are teaching and how students are performing, and they tell nothing else. They give us no other information. And even as a student, taking assessments was always a very intimidating thing for me, and I would get stressed out taking them. But this is basically a slide to show you that it's not scary. It doesn't have to be limited to a high stake test at the end of the year or end of the unit. Um, Assessment can be in the simple form of a formative assessment, which is used during instruction. Um, and those formative assessments give the teacher and the student much more information about their growth and what they're learning during the learning process, during the instruction, which is a lot different than summative assessments that are at the end of the units. Studies have shown that the more we assess our students with appropriate assessments, which we'll be talking about, the more we provide them feedback to those assessments, then the more our students will learn and grow. Implementing assessments in the classroom can be very simple if you know the proper steps to take to create an assessment and the steps to take after an assessment. In order to teach all students and implement differentiated instruction, there are several technology tools that you can use to both help your students learn, but also to allow them to use as a form of assessment instead of, say, a written assignment that they might not be as comfortable with, or a presentation in front of the class. So some keys to assessment. Assess often. Creating an environment where assessments, especially formative, are normal will lower the stress that the term of assessment can have on a student. Assessments can become something that students do regularly, like daily, weekly, halfway through the unit. Great formative assessment that can be given daily or weekly is an exit slip. These are quick, informal responses that students answer before leaving a classroom. They're a very easy way to assess a student's understanding of material that you've gone over in that class or during that week of classes. And I've actually included an example of an exit slip that I created for my third grade recorder students on this next slide. Basically, it says they fill out what song we were working on, if they can or can't play it, and then they kind of rate themselves. And I chose this with student-friendly language. I am awesome and can play every note perfectly and correctly. I got most of the notes, but messed up a few times. I messed up a lot. So this is all language that they could use rather than students can blah blah blah. Um, and I think that this is a really good rubric that I've kind of created as an exit slip, and I've actually gotten a lot of results from this rubric. I've found a lot of students that were struggling, didn't want to speak up, but now I can work with them the next class to help them improve without them having to raise their hand and say, "Oh, Miss Cummings, I don't really understand this." So exit slips, great formative assessment. Creating appropriate assessments are the only way to achieve maximum student learning. Rick Stiggins and Jan Chapuis discuss keys to a quality assessment. Assessments should have clear purposes. Why are we assessing? They should have clear targets to answer what are we assessing, and are those targets clear? Assessments should have a sound design. How are we assessing, or with what methods? Which later I'll be talking about certain technology tools that can be those methods. And then effective communication. Why communicate? To support or report the learning. To whom? Can students communicate their own learning? And Stiggins and Chapuis talk about this in a book that I'll reference at the end. Knowing the difference between formative and summative assessments is very important when implementing classroom assessment. Formative assessments, like I mentioned before, support learning. They're taken during the learning process or during the instruction of the material. Summative assessments are the ones that hold the accountability if students have mastered or failed to master a subject. And they're taken usually at the end of a unit, at the end of the semester, the end of the year. Those are our MCAS and our PARCC tests. And then formative assessments should always be followed with effective feedback because those are taken, like I said, during the learning process, during instruction. And so if we give our students effective feedback following the assessment, they will be able to improve, or they'll have the chance to improve before we give them that summative assessment. Effective feedback is one of the most important parts of implementing classroom assessment. This is how our students actually learn. We can give them information about what they did accurately and what things they can do to improve their work. Our goal in giving effective feedback isn't just for our students to learn, but also to eventually have them self-assess. We want them to recognize the quality of the work they did and what they can do to improve. Continuing with effective feedback, Grant Wiggins discusses this heavily in 3 separate articles, which again I will be referencing later. Some of his ideas in these articles are that feedback is not simply an opinion of what I liked or what I didn't like about the performance, the assessment. Feedback is not an evaluation. We shouldn't be putting value or a number or letter grade to the feedback. Praise and blame comes with the evaluation. And then feedback should be a statement of what happened or didn't happen related to the goal or learning target. I've actually included a YouTube video that I created going further into the explanation of Grant Wiggins' ideas of effective feedback, which I will be referencing later. This next slide actually is the YouTube video that I created, but I'm not going to show you this. I'm going to include the link in the references so that you can watch it after. This next slide. So now we're going to talk about the technology that you can use for assessments. Our students are growing up in a technological world. There is no reason for us to not use technology as a learning tool as well as an assessment tool. I've explored many technology tools that I now use to help me teach lessons. I found that not all students prefer to write an essay about certain topics. Some students may prefer to make a presentation or a poster or a video, among other things, as a way to demonstrate their knowledge, their learning, in the form of an assessment. We should allow our students to explore their preferred tool to demonstrate the most knowledge they can. So I've explored many technology tools. The first one is a Prezi. This is actually the program that I'm using right now. Prezi is very similar to a PowerPoint, but there are many aspects that can make it a really unique tool to use in the form of an assessment. There are some really unique themes to choose from. They're free to use with an online account. The cool part is once you go into your online account, all of your Prezis come up together so you can access them at any time. They can be used or viewed on almost any device. I've used them on my iPad, my computer, and my phone, which is not an iPhone. And they're really easy to use. Adding pictures and videos is very simple. And the website, like I've included, is prezi.com. This next tool is called Kahoot. This is a fun way to assess students as a class. So many students have cell phones, iPads, laptops. Even if students don't have those, most schools will have a computer cart, an iPad cart, or a computer lab, and with any of those, Kahoot is available to use. It's a multiple choice quiz game. Students actually sign into the quiz using a unique code, and then they compete against each other to answer questions both correctly and in a timely manner. It takes the stress out of a typical individual test. It could also be a fun way to prepare for the real test. And then students could even make their own Kahoots as a form of assessment that the rest of the class could try out. And the website for this is getkahoot.com. The third technology tool I'll be providing today is called Powtoon. This is another fun assessment for those visual learners who would prefer to create something over writing. It also could take the place of a presentation. Powtoon is a free animation technology tool. Students can create and animated video and input their voice to characters they use in the animation. The narrated part would be where the assessment comes to play. This would be what they normally write or present to the class, but instead they did this in the comfort of their own home with characters to represent them. Intimidation factor really goes down significantly with this tool, and the website for this is powtoon.com. And with all of these keys to implementation of assessment and a few technology tools that I use, I hope this helps you implement assessments into your classroom daily. And here are my references. You'll actually notice that these three are the Grant Wiggins articles. And then this last one is the YouTube video that I created. I had to make the link kind of weird separated, but that's the YouTube video if you want to watch it. And I hope you enjoyed this presentation. I hope it gives you a lot of information about assessments. Thank you for watching.